A woman slapped a royal guard's horse, scoffing as if her brazen act would fade into the crowd. But what happened next left everyone utterly speechless. But before we continue, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you appreciate stories about respect and dignity, make sure to subscribe so you never miss one. With that said, let's step into the grand courtyard of Buckingham Palace on a bright summer morning, where people from all walks of life gather in anticipation of the famed changing of the guard. Sunlight glints on the ornate black and gold iron gates, creating a regal frame for the imposing red-uniformed soldiers who stand motionless at their posts. They are more than just tourist attractions. They are symbols of centuries of unwavering tradition, each posture a testament to discipline and sacrifice. Towering in front of the palace is the statue of Queen Victoria, looking down over the bustling crowd. Tourists snap pictures, children tug at their parents' sleeves, and the general hum of activity has that air of excitement that comes from being so close to living history. The royal guards, with their tall bearskin hats and immaculately maintained uniforms, embody a strict code of conduct, one that demands they remain composed regardless of provocation. Among them is a seasoned officer, Thomas Brennan. He stands beside his horse, Sterling, a majestic black stallion with liquid, intelligent eyes and a meticulously groomed mane. Thomas is in his late 40s, his jaw set with the calm assurance of a man who has served his country not just in ceremonial roles, but in active duty overseas. His posture reflects pride and humility in equal measure, as though he understands the gravity of wearing the uniform far more deeply than the average observer could guess. In every direction, the city of London thrums with life, but here at the palace gates, time seems to slow. The glacial stillness of the guards forms a silent bulwark against the chatter of the crowd. There is a near reverence among most visitors, a softening of voices, a sense that one does not intrude on men who stand so rigidly, representing an institution older than themselves. Yet amid this respectful ambiance, one voice rises a bit too loudly, a woman, mid-30s, stylishly dressed, barking out instructions to her friends as they fiddle with cameras and phones. Her name is Veronica Hale, a social media influencer who built her brand on outlandish stunts, lavish spending, and a cultivated image of untouchable confidence. Dripping in designer labels and flanked by a small group of similarly overdressed companions, she's come here not out of historical curiosity, but because she wants a captivating backdrop for her live stream. Veronica sees the guards as living props, rigid figures meant to be toyed with for entertainment. She stands out like a neon sign, one arm extended to her phone's lens as she speaks to her online audience. Guys, I'm at Buckingham Palace, and these guards are so stiff, so lifeless. I wonder if they're even allowed to speak. Her eyes flick over Thomas and Sterling. Or if they'll just stand there like mannequins no matter what happens. She laughs, a tinkling, superficial sound that draws a few onlookers closer. Some people glance at her with mild disapproval, but she thrives on that tension. She's used to it. After all, controversy drives engagement, and engagement is money. Veronica's phone screen is a flurry of hearts, likes, and real-time comments. Her fans egg her on, urging her to provoke a reaction. She plays to that audience, switching the camera angle to show the stoic guard and his horse. "He doesn't even blink," she exclaims, inching closer. There is something almost childlike in her curiosity, though overshadowed by her brazen disregard for respect. She moves with a boldness that suggests she believes the world is hers to bend to her whims. Slowly she reaches a manicured hand toward the guard, then flips the camera back to her face, capturing her wide-eyed, mocking expression. Around them, a small crowd forms. Most people come to see the guards, not to watch a spectacle of disrespect. But spectacle is happening nonetheless. Children stand near their parents, uncertain whether to laugh or to be scared. A few older veterans watch, arms folded, scowling at the scene. Veronica remains oblivious to the silent condemnation, or perhaps she simply chooses to ignore it in favor of the rush from her digital audience. Officer Thomas Brennan, behind the unwavering facade, notices her every move. He's been trained to handle a multitude of situations: threats, emergencies, drunks who cross the line, curious children who wander too close, even people who test the boundary of how far they can push a royal guard. This is just another challenge. Another day at his post. Another test of self-restraint and discipline. He feels Sterling shift slightly, the horse's acute instincts picking up on the tension, but both soldier and steed remain in controlled stillness. Veronica edges even closer, swirling around in front of Thomas, making a grand show for the camera. She tries to match her face to his, so the live stream sees them both in the frame. The crowd draws a collective breath, expecting, perhaps, an explosive confrontation. But Thomas stares ahead, unblinking, not acknowledging her. She laughs. Again, "Oh my gosh, he's like a robot. Or maybe he's just ignoring me." That last remark is pointed, as if she can't fathom someone not reacting to her presence. A mother in the crowd gently ushers her child away, wanting no part of the unfolding drama. An older gentleman in a wheelchair, wearing a small military badge, shakes his head, eyes narrowed. The tension in the air grows, but it remains overshadowed by the daily hustle of tourists pushing in for a better view. Veronica, in full showmanship mode, refuses to be upstaged by a statue-like guard. She takes a step forward and brushes a stray piece of lint, or so she pretends, from Thomas's lapel, a bold intrusion into the personal space of a soldier who has not granted permission. The touch is fleeting, but the challenge is clear. Still no reaction. Thomas remains in place, hands on the reins, gaze forward. Veronica's brow quirks. She looks back at her phone. Comments roll in, half of them encouraging her to go further, the other half warning her to stop. A line is forming in the sand, and she's about to cross it. This short segment of her video has the potential to go viral, precisely because of its brazen irreverence. To her, the guards might as well be theme park entertainers, there for her amusement. But for Thomas, every fibre of his being is trained to uphold the monarchy's dignity, to remain a pillar of composure no matter the provocation. Beneath the surface, though, he's vigilant. Veronica's antics pose a risk to the horse, to bystanders, and to the sanctity of the guard's duty. The unwritten rules are clear. Never touch the guards or their horses, never block their path, never cross certain boundaries. Veronica seems unaware or uncaring of these protocols. She's set on that one big moment, something to jolt her video into trending territory. She momentarily steps back, adjusting her phone's angle, reading the deluge of comments. Then, with a theatrical sigh, she turns, determined to provoke a bigger reaction. Thomas senses a shift in her demeanor. This time, she glides a hand along, the reins of the horse calling him pretty pony in a condescending voice, as though speaking to a child's toy. Sterling flicks an ear but remains still, a testament to rigorous military training. The crowd is no longer just curious, they're apprehensive. Such unwelcome interference with a guard's horse can be dangerous, both for the intruder and the animal. But Veronica is caught in the momentum of her own performance, feeding off the adrenaline of pushing boundaries. She glances at Thomas's face, expecting anger or alarm, but sees only that stony resolve. Something flashes in her eyes, an odd mix of frustration and excitement. She wants him to do something, anything, so she can capture the moment. Instead, he remains silent. The tension crackles as she lifts her hand, smiling for the camera. It happens before anyone can fully anticipate. She swings her palm lightly against the horse's muzzle, a motion too swift to feel accidental. The sound of the slap, though not thunderous, resonates with shocking clarity in the hush that follows. Sterling jolts, a purely instinctive reaction, then stands firm again. A wave of gasps travels through the onlookers. Time seems to freeze. A child covers her mouth in horror, her eyes darting between the distressed animal and the woman who inflicted harm. The old veteran clenches his jaw, his knuckles whitening on the armrest of his wheelchair. Thomas remains as still as ever, but inside, 1,000 thoughts race. His discipline is tested to its limit, the echo of that slap stinging far deeper than any personal insult. He feels Sterling tremble ever so slightly under the reins, a subtle signal of the horse's confusion and pain. Veronica, having committed this act, tilts her chin proudly, as if she's done nothing wrong. A few of her friends seem unsure, their laughter dying away. One of them mutters that they should leave, but Veronica is not finished. She glances again at her phone, reading the swirl of comments. The tide has changed. Where once she had enthusiastic supporters, she now faces a barrage of condemnation. She notices it, but can't quite break character yet. There's a moment where her lips part, as though she's about to defend herself or lash out at the viewers. The entire incident has taken mere seconds, but it's enough to spark a moral reckoning in the crowd. Anger brews, though no one moves yet. Tourists step back, half fearing that the guard will erupt in rage, and half hoping he does something to put the woman in her place. Still, Thomas remains anchored. Then, in a gesture so minimal yet laden with meaning, he shifts the reins to calm Sterling. He keeps his posture, his stance, everything in line with the guard's code. But now he speaks. His voice rings clear and measured, projecting the confidence of a man who has faced far graver challenges than a rude tourist. He begins by calling the horse by name, reassuring Sterling that all is well. Then he addresses Veronica, not with fury or condescension, but with a calm that carries more weight than any shout could. His words are not loud, but they carry the authority of centuries of tradition behind them. He tells her that the guard she has chosen to demean stands for more than mere ceremony. He represents the lives lost in battles long ago, the unity of a nation, and the commitment to serve with dignity. He gently reminds her that the horse, too, is a soldier of sorts, trained to stand in the face of any disturbance and deserving of respect. In this moment, the air is thick with attention. No one dares speak over him. Veronica stands there, her phone still streaming, her entourage silent. She's never encountered such a response, one that is neither hysterical nor submissive, but profoundly confident. Thomas's tone holds no malice, only conviction. He explains that the discipline of a royal guard is not an invitation for abuse, but a testament to the ability to remain steadfast under any assault. He ends by telling her that if she must strike someone, she should choose him, a man who can bear it, rather than an innocent animal who serves without complaint. Veronica's bravado cracks just enough for a flicker of regret to show in her eyes. The crowd around them exhales, as though they've been holding their breath. Whispered. Comments begin, some praising Thomas, others calling for punishment for the woman. A palace official, alerted by the scene, steps forward, accompanied by a member of security. They approach Veronica, who now looks very much like a child caught in a terrible misdeed. The official glances at Thomas, who subtly inclines his head, indicating that while no physical harm came to him, the woman has violated a clear standard of conduct. Veronica's phone feed is still rolling, capturing every second. Comments pour in, thousands upon thousands, many outraged by her act. The elaborate persona she has built for herself is suddenly under siege from the very fans she relies on for affirmation. A hush grows, broken only by the quiet snorts of Sterling and the distant roar of city traffic. The official speaks to Veronica, telling her she must leave immediately. She opens her mouth, perhaps to protest, to rationalize, or to seek some lifeline from her viewers, but the words do not come. A guard from inside the palace steps out. His presence underscores the seriousness of the situation. Gently but firmly, he instructs Veronica that her behavior is unacceptable, and he requests that she cooperate. Her entourage, sensing the shift from comedic spectacle to real consequences, begins to step away. One of her friends tries to reason with the official, while another friend simply looks mortified, eyes darting around, unsure if they too might be in trouble. The camera is still capturing it all. Veronica's stunned face, the stern expression of the palace officials, the unwavering stance of Thomas Brennan, and the watchful calm of Sterling the horse. In the hush that follows, a ripple of applause builds from a corner of the crowd. It's not loud or raucous. It's a hesitant, respectful applause that acknowledges the guard's dignity. Others join in. Soon, the scattered clapping becomes a unified gesture of appreciation. Veronica hears it, and it stings, because it is directed at the guard, not at her. She's used to applause, but this is a new kind, born from moral approval, not spectacle. In that moment, her mask fully slips. No longer the fearless influencer, she looks very small, overshadowed by the magnitude of what she's done and the calm reaction that revealed her cruelty for what it was. Her phone, still broadcasting, floods with messages of disapproval. She sees it all: accusations of animal abuse, demands for an apology, condemnation of her arrogance. Her face flushes. She's forcibly escorted away, the live stream cutting off at last, leaving behind a swirl of confusion and shame. For a moment, the courtyard stands in the echo of that applause and the guard's serene stance. People look to Thomas with admiration, some offering quiet words of thanks or simply nodding in respect. A father leans down to his young son, explaining how important it is to treat animals with kindness and to respect those who protect the nation. A tourist from another country remarks to her friend about how impressed she is by the guard's composure. The old veteran in the wheelchair silently wipes at the corner of his eye, moved by the calm strength that resonates with his own memories of service. Another mother, holding her little girl, uses this as a teaching moment. "That man showed us how to be strong without being mean," she whispers. Thomas remains at his post, the tension in his arms easing. Sterling, sensing the shift in atmosphere, nuzzles the guard's sleeve gently. Thomas allows himself a subtle moment of relief. In his mind, the incident is already categorized as just. Another day on duty, albeit a dramatic one. He knows the camera phones have captured everything, and that soon the entire world might witness how he reacted under provocation. Yet he stands unwavering, content in the knowledge that he fulfilled his duty by not succumbing to anger or violence. He also silently thanks Sterling, a partner who has stood with him through ceremonial parades, crowd control, and days just like this one. Over the next few days, the incident becomes an online sensation. Numerous clips circulate, showing from various angles how Veronica struck the horse and how Officer Thomas responded. The world reacts with swift judgment against her and overwhelming support for him. News outlets pick up the story, analyzing it in talk shows and opinion columns. Animal rights groups commend the guard's protective stance over the horse. Military families praise his calm dignity, grateful for a public demonstration of the discipline that so many service members embody. Veronica's social media presence collapses under the weight of mass unsubscriptions and harsh critiques. Sponsors withdraw from collaborations. Her once adoring fans feel betrayed, having seen a side of her that glorifies cruelty and disrespect. She attempts to post an apology video, but it's filled with justifications and half measures, and it only inflames public anger further. She's forced to disable comments, a drastic measure for someone who thrived on public engagement. The influencer persona that soared so high on shock value now lies shattered, undone by her own hand. Meanwhile, Thomas Brennan continues his schedule. He wakes up early, dons the iconic red uniform, leads Sterling to his position, and stands guard with the same unyielding focus he has always maintained. Tourists who recognize him approach more cautiously than before, some saluting, others offering thanks. In the evenings, he returns home to a modest flat where he lives with quiet contentment. He's not oblivious to the sudden fame, but he neither basks in it nor scorns it. He simply continues, guided by the same principles that have carried him through military service and into the Royal Guards. Parents begin telling the story of the guard and the horse as a moral lesson, describing how dignity triumphs over arrogance. Classroom discussions revolve around the importance of respecting both people and animals. Social media, ironically, turns into a platform for positive discussion, many calling for more kindness in a world that often rewards shock tactics. Within a week, almost everyone with an internet connection has seen or heard about the moment. A brazen influencer attempted to humiliate a royal guard, only to be humbled herself. As time passes, Buckingham Palace sees a small surge in visitors drawn by curiosity. They want to catch a glimpse of the calm guard who upheld centuries of tradition through a single measured response. Some have even taken to leaving thank you notes or small tokens of appreciation at the gates, dedicated to both the guards and their horses. Thomas finds these gestures touching, but he maintains his stoic front, adhering to the code that demands an unspoken distance between guard and public. However, in brief private moments, he allows himself a gentle smile. Veronica becomes a cautionary tale. Internet commentators dissect her downfall as an example of what happens when arrogance collides with genuine moral fortitude. The drama that once fueled her popularity now haunts her. She has to confront the reality that her personal brand can't survive on shock value alone, not when real values are at stake. Whether she changes for the better or tries to rebuild her reputation with more stunts is unknown. But for now, her name is synonymous with a lack of respect. One afternoon, as Thomas stands once again by Sterling, the usual crowd forms. They watch from behind the barrier, some snapping pictures, others just observing. A little girl steps forward and waves tentatively. She has a small Union Jack flag clutched in one hand, and she's wearing a T-shirt with a cartoon horse on it. Thomas doesn't break posture, but there's a subtle acknowledgement, a slight nod that might be imperceptible to some, but the girl notices and beams. It's a quiet affirmation that in the wake of disrespect, a deeper respect often takes root. And so the palace courtyard returns to its daily rhythm. The lapses of decency that sometimes occur there do not overshadow the legacy of discipline and dedication that the guards represent. Each guard, like Thomas, stands as a sentinel to history, commanding respect not by force, but by the silent authority of tradition. Sterling, too, resumes his stoic watch, unaffected by the chaos humans bring, loyal only to his training and his riders' calm guidance. Beyond the gates, life goes on. London's sprawling metropolis bustles, filled with stories that intersect and diverge every minute. But this one story takes on a life of its own, transcending borders. Its moral resonates in living rooms, cafes, online forums, and dinner tables worldwide. People share the clip and discuss the guards' restraint. Many find solace in the idea that in an era marked by sensationalism, there's still value in dignified composure and kindness to others, be they human or animal. In the aftermath, palace staff quietly reinforce guidelines for visitors, reminding them never to touch the guards or their horses. More signs go up, ensuring a measure of respect. But even without the signs, a renewed sense of decorum permeates. People do not want to be the next viral villain. Children, in particular, seem to watch the guard with a mix of awe and affection, as if they understand he's not just a statue, but a living symbol of service. Meanwhile, Thomas's personal life remains largely unchanged. He continues to rise before dawn, maintaining the horse's tack, practicing drills, and fulfilling ceremonial duties. He's not oblivious to the wave of attention, but he keeps it at bay, much like how he stood firm against Veronica's provocations. Sometimes, in the privacy of the stables, he speaks softly to Sterling, letting the horse know how proud he is, how grateful he is for a partner that didn't panic, even under assault. Sterling, of course, responds with only calm eyes and gentle breath, but there's an unspoken bond shared between a soldier and his mount. On social media, the incident spawns countless reactions. Artists draw pictures of the guard and Sterling, sometimes depicting them as towering figures of moral strength, facing off against the small silhouette of a brazen woman. Poets write verses about quiet courage. Parents recount how their children, after seeing the video, expressed horror at the slap, but admiration for the guard's reaction. Even teachers incorporate the story into lessons about empathy and responsibility. Veronica, for her part, tries to keep a low profile after being escorted away from the palace. She issues a formal apology in a statement to a local newspaper, acknowledging her mistake in harming the horse and disrespecting the guard. Yet the damage to her reputation is done. For a while she disappears from social media, allowing the furor to settle. Whether she learns from this or not remains unclear, but the world moves on, carrying the memory of her actions as a stark reminder of how quickly arrogance can collapse when faced with unwavering dignity. Sometime later, Thomas's commanding officer calls him into a private meeting. The conversation is short, mostly to commend him for handling the situation with impeccable professionalism. The officer mentions how higher-ups were impressed by his composure, how they believe he exemplified the values they hope every royal guard upholds. Thomas accepts the praise with humility, insisting he was only doing his duty, yet he feels a quiet pride, a sense that his years of service and discipline have led him to this moment, where he could represent something larger than himself. There is no grand ceremony or medal awarded, just an acknowledgement from his superiors, which is enough for him. The sun continues to rise and set on Buckingham Palace, throwing shadows across the courtyard where the incident happened. Tourists come and go, some hearing stories of that day, others unaware of the drama that played out on those cobblestones. But the guard with the horse remains, day after day, as part of the long tapestry of tradition. Those who witness the daily ritual of guard duty do so with a touch more respect, perhaps remembering how a single act of cruelty was met not with violence, but with a lesson in humanity. For many, the story ends when Veronica is escorted away and humiliated online. But for those who reflect more deeply, it continues as a call to personal introspection. How often do we, in our haste or arrogance, forget the humanity of those around us, be they men, women, or the animals we rely on? How often do we cling to our egos, never considering the impact of our actions on others? Thomas's calm, steady response stands as an enduring reminder that one can be strong without aggression, assert dignity without cruelty, and uphold honor without theatrics. The final frame in many people's minds is that of Thomas Brennan and Sterling continuing their watch, undisturbed by the passing chaos. It's a snapshot of a man and his horse, representing centuries of British tradition, tested by the fleeting arrogance of a bystander. In that snapshot lies the essence of what truly matters: respect, composure, and the moral clarity to know that might does not always make right. The world, with all its noise and fleeting trends, can pause for a moment to recognize the power of quiet integrity. Some time passes, and as the seasons change, the memory of that viral clip evolves. New controversies arise, new stories capture public attention, but this particular narrative lingers like a classic fable, a modern parable about humility and strength. Parents still tell their children about the day a royal guard's horse was slapped by a rude influencer, and how the soldier's composed words carried more weight than any slap ever could. And so, on another ordinary day, Thomas Brennan stands, once more at his post. The sky is overcast, a light drizzle wets the cobblestones. Tourists huddle under umbrellas, some still peering through gate railings, hoping for a glimpse of the legendary guard. There's a subtle hush that follows his presence, a recognition that in this unassuming figure lies a profound story. Rain gathers on his bearskin hat and drips onto his uniform, but he does not flinch. Sterling shifts slightly, tail swishing. The city around them buzzes with life, and yet here they remain, an unmoving anchor in a sea of constant change. A small child looks up at the guard, eyes shining. The child's mother bends down and softly recounts the story, pointing to the horse as though he's a celebrity in his own right. The child stares in wonder, and though Thomas can't break his stance, he senses the child's awe and hopes the tiny seed of respect for tradition and animals will grow. This is how moral lessons take root, through witnessing behavior that exemplifies virtue, not through force or fear. At the end of his shift, Thomas silently leads Sterling back to the stables. He removes the ceremonial saddle, checks the horses' hooves, ensuring no harm has come from standing so long on the hard ground. He doesn't dwell on Veronica or on the thousands of social media posts about him. He sees his role as one of many, carrying on a lineage that stretches back generations. Yet he also knows that somewhere out there, someone might be remembering his actions and thinking about how to respond to their own challenges with composure instead of anger. In a quiet corner of the stables, as the horse munches on some hay, Thomas takes a moment to reflect. He thinks of all the men and women he served with, the friends he lost in military conflicts, and the unwavering sense of duty that has guided him through life. He knows that a single moment captured on video has become a moral tale, but it's really just an extension of what he believes every day. That dignity is strongest when tempered by empathy, and that violence or anger in response to provocation rarely solves anything. His story merges with countless others who have stood for ideals larger than themselves. Far from the palace, Veronica sits in a luxurious apartment, pondering the direction of her online brand. She replays the slap in her mind, hearing the echo of condemnation in the official's voice, feeling the weight of the guard's words. Perhaps she understands now the gravity of her mistake, or perhaps she's planning another stunt to recapture a lost audience. Only she can decide whether the lesson sinks in. But the world has moved on, and for the guard, all that truly mattered was that he didn't betray his oath or his conscience. Thus, under the grey sky, the palace stands firm, the guards take their posts, and the horses' hooves tap calmly on the historic courtyard. People depart with souvenirs and stories. Some of those stories mention a slap that reverberated around the globe, but more importantly, a measured response that taught everyone watching. There is power in silence, strength in poise, and honor in respecting both tradition and the creatures that serve alongside us. The day draws to a close. Lights begin to flicker on around Buckingham Palace. Tourists trickle away, heading for the Tube or nearby hotels. Thomas's shift ends, and he heads inside, disappearing from the public eye until it's time to don his uniform once again. The hush of night descends on the palace gates, and with it, a renewed sense of calm. Tomorrow will bring new faces, new challenges, and another opportunity to demonstrate that real power doesn't come from lashing out at what stands before you, but from standing firm in who you are and what you believe. And so we leave this story with that lasting image. A royal guard, eyes forward, horse by his side, neither swayed nor diminished by vanity or provocation. if there is a moral in this modern fable, it is that honor often reveals itself in the quiet moments when we choose dignity over ego. In the end, a loud, arrogant act created a silence that spoke louder than any applause, reminding us all that respect and discipline are virtues that can turn even a moment of cruelty into a lesson heard around the world. If this resonates with you, take a moment to share it, reflect on it, and pass it on. Stories of respect and composure deserve to be told, and we all could use a little more dignity in our lives.